Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom Lee, representing National Heritage Academies and Charter Schools USA.
Mr. Lee, thank you for being here.
Yes, sir.
Just wanted to figure out, maybe get some information from you. What kind of services do your clients offer to nonprofit public charter schools that would be of interest to them?
Two, I think, principally, and those two grow out of a record of success. My clients operate approximately 150 charter schools around the country. We serve approximately 100,000 students combined. Why is that? It's because those businesses know how to manage a school and to manage it successfully. Two things principally are, I think, helpful here. One, with both Charter Schools USA and National Heritage Academies, when a school is opened, when a state or local authorizer decides that a school is merited, our clients will bring principals to those schools who have opened schools before. They know how to start an operation from the ground up, and they've been successful at it. Now, the teachers, of course, are going to come from the local area. And what we find is there's always a waiting list. At Charter Schools USA, there's a waiting list of more than 30,000 teachers for the system all across because the schools are good, the wage and benefit operations are competitive and comparable, and people know they're working for good managers. So thing one is a first-rate, experienced principal. And one of the things we've said and learned many times in this state is that a great school starts from a great principal. Doesn't just include a great principal, but starts there. The second thing we do that I think is materially different is we build new school buildings. It is typical for our clients at National Heritage Academies and at Charter Schools USA. When they are offered the opportunity to manage a school, they will, at their own risk and at no cost to the taxpayer, because as we know, the dollars flowing per student, per pupil are the same, they will come and they'll buy a piece of land and build a brand new building. Now, how do they get to do that? What is it about those entities that enables them to do that? And frankly, it's the 3% margin. It's the ability to manage your business effectively, to realize a return that can be plowed back into facilities, and then to be able to take that balance sheet to bankers. When Representative Pitts and I had a conversation about this earlier, we talked about in his business of banking the challenge that not-for-profits face when they want to borrow large sums of money to build buildings. And so because of that challenge, our business model allows us to bring something to the community and to that school that frankly a not-for-profit business model does not. And so what is it that's different? We know that charter schools struggle with facilities, and we know that there's always that natural tension between the unused school building and the community and the students who want to come into that building, and securing it and making it safe and making it exciting and a place where students want to come and families want to be a part. The facilities is a big piece of what our clients offer, Representative Love, that is different, candidly, from other participants in the market. Does that mean that there are not excellent charter management operations who work on a different model? It does not. But it does mean that if yours is a community where you are growing or where the population is shifting from one place to another, and your school facilities have not kept pace with that growth or that shift, then our clients offer potentially a way to solve that problem, to build a new school building at no cost to the taxpayers and to provide an up-and-running, out-of-the-box educational opportunity for the students at that school. I apologize for the long answer, but I wanted to be sure I answered you thoroughly.
So if I have you correct, what you're saying is the two things that you all offer, the two services that you offer are good principals and buildings.
And let me also offer something else.
This is
Because three, yes, sir.
Okay.
Because the schools are, because of the network has its size, or each network has its size, then mistakes, things that go wrong, things that are areas of improvement and opportunity can be replicated across the network. Lessons learned have the ability to take hold. In the one-off school, as terrific as that may be, those lessons are harder learned and may not be learned early. And here's why that's important. There was a terrific study that came out early last year from Stanford University about what is it that makes a successful charter school. And what the folks at the Center for Research into Educational Outcomes at Stanford found is that the successful charter school is successful from the start. In a way, it's like a small business. Small businesses that are successful at the start have a much better chance of succeeding. The charter school that's successful at the start is going to be successful at the start, I think, for two reasons. One, it's going to be well run, well managed, and it's going to be well capitalized.
One last question, Mr. Chairman, if I can.
Proceed, sir.
How much you charge?
I'm sorry, sir?
How much do you charge for the service?
I'm not sure I understand the question. You mean
How much does the
management
company charge for the service?
Yes, how much, yeah. Because you got to get paid, right?
Well, that's right.
I mean, there's a fee involved.
That's right. It's so typically the way the system, the way the structure works, and it's going to vary by contract, and in every one of these circumstances, because we're talking about public schools, the contracts are all publicly available. Typically, what happens is the management company receives the dollars that the not-for-profit company would receive, same dollars, and then manages the schools out of those dollars.
So, if I have you correct, what you just said is you charge $9,000 plus per student.
No, sir.
You said the dollars that the company would normally receive.
I said let me be clear. The dollars that are available to the company to manage the school are the same dollars that would be available to the individual principal, if there was one, or to the charter management organization, if there was one. It's the same dollars.
Well, how much goes to a nonprofit public charter now per student?
It depends on the locality. In Nashville, it will be a little more than $9,000 a year.
So you do get $9,000 per student?
No, sir.
You just said $9,000.
No, sir. I said that's the cost of running the school. All but 3%. If you want to know what we charge, all but 3% of that is going to go into that school, into those teachers, into those programs, into that building. That's how it works. This is a grocery store business model.
I know, and I was the last born, so I might be a little bit slower than my sister, so just help me out. How much do you charge for the service was the question. You said it depends on how much the principal gets per student or per...
No, sir, I'm sorry. In each community, the amount per pupil will vary.
Right.
Depending on the local funding.
Let's take Nashville, my district, MNPS.
Yes, sir.
You get about 9,000 to 11,000 per student. So,
I think it's closer to 9, but yes, sir.
All right.
So the dollars come, they follow the student. The school is operated. Teachers are hired. The principal's hired. The lights are kept on. The facilities are kept safe and clean and available. That same dollar all those dollars go to the charter management organization if it's not for profit.
Right.
All those dollars go to an individual board if they choose not to hire a for-profit company. And all of those dollars go to the management company if there is a management company. It's the same dollars. What I did say is our clients have a margin of about 3%. If you want to know how much they get paid, that's what they get paid.
So they get 3% of the 9,000,
which they then use to reinvest to build that new building in that community.
So they get 3% of the 9,000. In this case, they get 3% of the 9,000
That's typical.
per student.
That's typical, yes, sir.
And would they then pass the rest on to the nonprofit school, or?
It goes to the operation of the school. I mean, it pays for the operation of the school. Just as if it were a charter management organization, it pays for the operation of the school.
Right, that's what I thought that's what I said earlier, that the money that would go to, let's say, Lead Academy, the money that goes to Lead for every student, in this instance, it would go to the charter management organization, and they would run the school.
That's right.
Minus 3%, which goes to who's the 3% go to?
That's the typical margin. That's the dollars that allow the management company to plow back into the community the cost of the real estate in the buildings. That's the difference.
So that 3% pays for the building.
It does.
So taxpayers do pay for the building.
No, sir. I'm sorry.
Where does the 3% come from?
Representative Love, let's
sorry.
sort of complete one more question, sir. I think we were sort of getting in a running debate. We just didn't. Well, we'll come back to you, okay, sir? Representative Pitts, recognized. We're still out of session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lee, let me applaud you for standing up here or sitting there. You said one of the things that your clients, the companies, bring to the table is building new buildings, which, in their view, translates into results. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes, sir.
Seems like we ought to be talking as a General Assembly about building every LEA a new school. If that's the key to success, we ought to be doing that everywhere and bypassing some of this. But anyway, my concern is students in a lot of our schools, because we expect top 10 results with bottom 10 funding. Students everywhere having to sell candy and magazines. Is that in order to make up for what we don't fund as a state and as a local government? Or does that model also fit for your clients, National Heritage Academy, Charter Schools USA?
Representative Pitts, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We're still out of session. Representative Lawler, you're recognized.
Good afternoon, Mr. Lee.
Representative?
Where are your two organizations located? What states are they located in?
National Heritage Academies is based in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and operates schools in about a dozen states. Charter Schools USA is based in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and operates schools, it's in 7 to 9 states.
I'm somewhat confused. You said that 97% of the money went to actually run the schools and pay for the schools, but 3% went back in to build the schools. Did I misunderstand that, or?
Just so I'm clear, 3% is the margin.
That's the profit margin.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, so there's a profit in what you're doing. So
Their businesses, yes, sir.
Would you say it would be worth your while as a profit? And we had this come up last year, I believe, Chairman, remember, year before last on charter schools. Primarily, will you be staying with the larger cities where the larger funds are? I mean, like Memphis, Nashville, Chattanooga, Knoxville. Are y'all planning as a for-profit operation to move into the smaller cities that don't have as many students, where there's not as much money for you to make on that?
I think the question is, where are there markets for charter schools? And the answer, Representative Lawler, is if you look at the record of where schools are located by our clients, they are in urban and suburban communities. They tend not to be in sparser areas because of just the challenge of bringing kids together in a less populated area. But you cannot have the record of success and the number of schools that our clients manage if you're only building in urban areas, frankly. There are other participants who want to participate in those markets. There are other school choice opportunities in many of those communities. And so If you look at National Heritage Academies, for example, its first school was built in suburban Grand Rapids, Michigan, not a place we would typically think of as a kind of an urban core area. I visited that school. It is a school that I think any of us would be proud to send our kids to. It's a superb school. Now, I've also been to National Heritage Academy School in a reclaiming neighborhood in Grand Rapids, where in that case what happened was the school district had abandoned a building over many years. NHA came back, renovated the building, and has now relocated a school in that community. So now there's a community center in that community again. So I think you'll find that we want to go where we're welcome, and those are all different kinds of communities.
Just one more question: if one of your charter schools is not successful, heaven forbid something like that would happen, but if it was not successful, would the building, since it was built by public funds, revert back to the public to pay taxes with, or do y'all sell it for profit?
No, the building is built at no risk to the taxpayers. The taxpayers aren't at risk in the structures at all. That's part of the deal.
Well, my concern is not the risk. It's if the charter is not successful, who owns the building?
Then in that case, the management company would own the building. But I would say that these two companies have never lost a charter.
And I would say that they would sell buildings that were paid for by public funds. With that, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Dunn, we're still out of session. Chairman Dunn, you're recognized.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I almost forgot my questions there, but it seems like we almost need an economics lesson here. You only get the 3% if you make wise decisions.
That's correct.
If you hire the wrong principal and they put together a staff that's not responsive to the kids or the parents, you may have half your seats empty, and at that point, y'all lose your shirt.
That's correct. And in fact, that can happen.
And you're the one who, when you borrow the money from the bank to build the building, you have to pay that mortgage note with the money you make.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Right. And
That's
so,
right.
you know, when we hear for profit, we just hear the word profit. Everybody goes into business for profit, but many businesses fail. In fact, more for-profits fail in the whole picture than actually make it. And so you need to make good and wise decisions, and how do we make it so that children want to come to this school? So you have to have a good product for them to come, so then you have the 3% that you can then pay for your staff to make the good decisions and plow back into other things.
Yes.
In a different industry, somebody told me, they said, Representative Dunn, the difference between a nonprofit and a for-profit is for-profits pay taxes. Nonprofits don't. I think that's accurate. And it's just funny that as we face our budget crunch right now, it's because lack of business taxes coming in. So thank God for the for-profit businesses in Tennessee who pay the taxes so we can build our schools and pay our teachers and do that. Now, I know your companies are out of state, but if you could let them know that we don't have a state income tax here, the weather is wonderful, we have lakes and mountains, I think if they came here and they made a profit, they would pay the taxes and everybody would benefit from that. So if you would send that message to your clients, they're welcome to come right along with Sean Hannity and everybody else to Tennessee. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Representative Coley, you're recognized, sir. We're out of session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Several questions. How do you determine a community in which to build a school?
That's actually the determination in Tennessee. That would be the determination of the LEA. If the LEA charters the school, then that's where the school will be built. It's the decision of the authorizing body where that goes.
Does the sense of community remain? I mean that one of the things that I'm hearing from all kinds of people from different emails I've been getting is that this loss of this sense of community. And how do you address that sense? Are your students transient, constantly moving across a city, an urban area to get to your school? Or is it community-based? Is it
in Tennessee, and understand, if our clients managed a public charter school in Tennessee, we'll be governed, of course, by Tennessee law. And Tennessee law is that a charter school is open enrollment, available to all.
Would you characterize the monies that you get as being a form of a government subsidy?
Not at all, sir.
Why?
Because the dollars follow the student in our system.
I know they follow the student, but they're taxpayer dollars.
And these are public schools. These are public schools that we manage for not-for-profit entities.
But it's not the same type of risk that many businesses engage in.
Well, it's certainly a different business, Representative. That's true, but it's a risky business. You have to do well.
Representative Aubrey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So much talk about businesses. I just wanted to clarify we're still talking about schools. There's something that we talked about in my office, and I want to know truly if these for-profit managers cannot open up their own schools, and we're talking about the different markets that they'll go into. From your company's perspective, will they recruit nonprofit entities to open up schools to increase your share of the educational market?
Not at all. Because if a not-for-profit wants us, hires us to come aboard, then we're pleased to. If the not-for-profit does not want us to come aboard, then we don't. And more to the point, if the LEA doesn't authorize the school, it's the LEA's choice in Tennessee, then it doesn't happen. You make an excellent point, Representative, about schools and not-for-profits and for-profits. We want to talk about schools too, and what we're seeking in the legislation is the same opportunity that LEAs presently have. For example, here in Nashville, Metropolitan Nashville Public Schools hires a for-profit company. It's based right here. It's called Educational Services of America. They run a school called the name just left me. Sorry. It's a public school for students with behavioral issues with special needs. It's a special population, to be sure, but it's a public school. Spectrum Academy. My apologies for the name slipping my brain. And Spectrum Academy is a public school. ESA chooses the principal, hires the teachers, designs the program that's best for those kids. It's a 5-year contract, and it's common. It's common in our schools around the state. That's not materially different from what we're talking about here. We're talking about finding companies that do well and manage good schools.
Okay. And that kind of doesn't really answer my question, though, the first part. What I'm saying is, if you identify Memphis and you say there are 5 parts of Memphis that we think would be profitable for us if we manage them, because we know we can attract the students, we know there's a need, but you can't outright open that school. Would you seek out nonprofit entities? And I'm not saying forcing them. I'm not saying the LEA would force them to take your services. But would you personally or your company seek out a nonprofit entity and say, hey, this is a service we offer. I think it would be great if we went into a charter school business together.
I think we find in the communities that we enter, some of those opportunities present themselves. Sometimes nonprofits will contact us. Sometimes we'll find opportunities. I will say the best, however, and most successful for everybody are when the authorizer, in this case, the Shelby County Schools, for example, and the not-for-profit work together to say, instead of doing sort of inbox authorizing, work together to say, here's a place where a good school is needed. Who would be the right operator for a school in that location? That's a mature, healthy charter market, and I'm confident that we've seen authorizer experiences all over the country. Many of them are terrific, and I think that kind of model works best, where you work in partnership with the authorizing body, in this case, the LEA and Shelby County Schools.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. As I was just listening to your discourse, I wanted to thank you for one thing. When you were asked about administrative costs, you pop that 3% off just like that. That's transparency. And that's one thing that I don't get when I deal with a lot of LEAs talking to when the money follows the child, how much money is actually going to the school to educate that child and not staying with administrative costs in our school system. And the figures I've seen as much as 30% stays in the administration and that doesn't actually go to the school or the principal manages that school. And so you gave me a 3%, you gave me transparency, and that's what we need. And so I commend you for that.
Thank you, Chairman.
Representative Moody, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. And Mr. Lee, thank you for being here. I've been asked this, and I don't know the answer. So in the case of during the years, say things maybe really go badly with the management, are there any opt-out procedures, or how would that affect, how would you get out of a bad situation, I guess?
It's a great question. It's going to be governed by the contract between the not-for-profit that has the charter and the management company. And just speaking for our two clients, in every management contract that those two companies enter into that I've read, there is always an immediate termination without cause available to the not-for-profit. So if the not-for-profit needs and decides that management company needs to go, they have the ability to make that happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Love, we're back to you, sir. Representative Ogberry.
Sorry, I just had a quick question.
Certainly.
Okay, so just to clarify, though, that 3% is y'all's profit. The money to pay the teachers and the principals and take care of the custodians and all that comes from that other 97%, right?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions while we're out of session? Any comments or questions? Representative Kane, and I think Representative DeBerry, am I correct?
Thank you, Chairman. How many states currently have for-profit charter schools in them?
There are some states that don't have any charter schools. There are approximately 33 states that permit, under certain circumstances, some wide open, some with different levels of scrutiny, for-profit management companies to operate public schools under contract. There are 6 states that do not, and Tennessee is one of those 6.
Okay, because I think we've had this same debate when it came to the virtual academies. We have for-profit virtual academies, not-for-profit virtual academies, and county-run virtual academies. And I'm just trying to understand, there seems to be this split, because I'll tell you, I've never received more emails in my office than about this bill. And I'm not quite I mean, a for-profit just handles the processing and the management slightly different for a 3% margin is what we're talking about. The other 97% being reinvested in the building. What does a not-for-profit management company charge to run the operation? I mean, they have them.
And there are many of them, and I don't represent them. I'd be loath to speak for them, but typically they would capture the 100% of the dollars that flow through, and that would be applied. And then,
so when we're talking about the 3%, though, we're talking about that is a profit margin that is being reinvested back into facilities, that's being reinvested back into what else? Because the facility part's being covered by the 97%, but we're talking about the actual capital outlay to build the building would be the 3%, correct?
generally that's true. The 97% covers the operating cost of the school. Yes, of the school. And then the building is built at no risk to the community, without any additional dollars other than what are spent on a charter school. If you and I started a charter school, we would get the same amount of public funds as a charter entity would get that chose to hire our company.
Because I just bring it up that when we had the virtual academy issue, we tried to shut down for-profit virtual academies, but we seem to have been okay with not-for-profit and county-run. And this country's run on capitalism and for profit. Now, I know some people have issues that get a little squeamish when it gets into the world of education, but it seems to work really well in all the other sectors. And I'm not hearing that 3% is taking away from the student itself.
The results would suggest, Representative Kane, that it's not. National Heritage Academies has been acknowledged recently in a study by Michigan State University as offering the top charter schools in the state of Michigan. And by top, I mean in terms of student achievement.
Representative DeBerry, did you want to be recognized while we're out of session?
No.
Okay. Representative Kohler, you're recognized. Any other questions while we're out of session? Seeing none, thank you. We're back in session.